Hello, my friends, hello, and welcome once again to the stately Vaughan Manor. And today, it's another action-packed episode of my 100 Favorite Books project. My 100 Favorite Books project, I made a list of my 100 favorite books. I made a video about it. I'll link it down below if you are interested. But what I do in this project is I will select one of my favorite books from the list, and I will try to find the best edition I can of that book, or at least the best edition for me. Usually this is the part where I say that I will then get rid of all the other editions I have, unhaul them. But today I'm talking about H.P. Lovecraft, and there ain't no way I'm gonna get rid of any of my H.P. Lovecraft. I have a ton of H.P. Lovecraft books. Many of them have great sentimental value for me, like this set right here from Arkham House that my stepfather gave me. And this is the set that made me a Lovecraft fan. So I'm not actually going to even pretend that I'm going to get rid of any of my Lovecraft, but the complete fiction of H.P. Lovecraft is one of my 100 favorite books. So I had to decide if I could only keep one, if I could, theoretically, only keep one, which edition of H.P. Lovecraft would I keep? And it didn't take long for me to think it over. I know which edition of H.P. Lovecraft I'm going to keep, and that is the collected fiction of H.P. Lovecraft, a Variorum edition. It's hard to pronounce. A Variorum edition. Which would be this. This is volume 1. It's a 3-volume set. And this is volume 1. This has his fiction from 1905 to 1925. And then we've got volume 2. This has 1926 through 1930. All his fiction between those periods. And then the final volume is this one. And it has his fiction 1931 through 1936. So the final third of his fictional output is in here. Really, really good stuff in this volume. And of course, on the back of each one, we've got a cool picture of H.P. Lovecraft. The covers are really creepy and strange. These are all edited by S.T. Joshi, and that's important. I'll get to why it's important in a minute. But this is printed by Hippocampus Press. And I was pretty lucky to get the hardcover edition. I believe you can still get these in paperback. And last I checked, these are actually still available as ebooks too. So these editions are readily available if you're interested. But I was lucky. I got the hardbacks when they came out. So what makes these so special? Why is this the edition that if I could only keep one, this is the one that I would keep? Besides just being really pretty. Well, these are Variorum editions. So this has all of the textual variants that have been printed in the various publications of H.P. Lovecraft. Famously, a lot of his fiction, when it was first printed in Weird Tales and then later in Arkham House, had a lot of errors. Some stories had a lot more errors than others, like At the Mountains of Madness, for instance, or The Shadow Out of Time. Both those stories were completely mangled when they were printed. Paragraphs were chopped up to make shorter paragraphs. Sentences were changed. All kinds of stuff were changed in those stories. And these texts restore those. S.T. Joshi spent a lot of time restoring the texts of H.P. Lovecraft to H.P. Lovecraft's original text. And he did that through consulting typescripts and manuscripts. And I will read a little bit from this introduction just so you know kind of what he did, S.T. Joshi. In the winter of 1976, shortly after I entered Brown University as an undergraduate, I began the task of examining the textual status of H.P. Lovecraft's stories, comparing the Arkham House editions of the period, released in 1963 through 1965, with the manuscripts and early printed appearances that were housed in the John Hay Library. The task of preparing corrected versions of the Lovecraft fiction took nearly the entirety of my stay at Brown as an undergraduate and graduate student, 1976 through 1982, and eventually led to the publication of these corrected texts in 3 volumes by Arkham House: The Dunwich Horror and Others, 1984, At the Mountains of Madness and Other Novels, 1985, and Dagon and Other Macabre Tales, 1986. Later I prepared corrected versions of Lovecraft's revisions, The Horror in the Museum and Other Revisions, 1989. And that would be these volumes right there that he's talking about. Let's see. The Arkham House editions ultimately led to the publication of 3 annotated editions by Penguin Classics: The Call of Cthulhu and Other Weird Stories in 1999, The Thing on the Doorstep and Other Weird Stories in 2001, The Dreams and the Witch House and Other Weird Stories 2004, which in turn led to Peter Straub's edition of Lovecraft's Tales 2005 for the Library of America, which used my texts. So his corrections of these texts have been all around. Pretty much, if you want to print an edition of Lovecraft and you want it to be, you know, solid, you need to use S.T. Joshi's texts. But as he got older, he decided, you know, as he learned more about Lovecraft, he thought there was still a little bit more to be done. And so he did that with this edition. I have, however, now undertaken a renewed investigation of the textual status of Lovecraft's stories, re-examining my textual notes and refining my decisions as to the best textual sources for the stories, as well as of Lovecraft's preferences in regard to spelling, punctuation, and other details. I also wish to present these textual variants for interested readers, since there has been, on occasion, confusion as to the sources of the corrections I made in my previous editions. I have now presented these variegated results in this Variorum edition, which lists all the textual variants in important publications of each Lovecraft story. The end result is a series of slight but on occasion significant revisions of my previous texts, so that in my judgment the texts presented here are now more in line with Lovecraft's habitual usages. And so what that means is, like, here is a Lovecraft story. This is the Quest of Irenon. At the bottom of each page, you have a list of, in the annotations there, that'll show you all the textual variants between different publications. And sometimes that's a lot, sometimes it's not many. But at the bottom of the page, they're all there. So if you were to ever make a study of this sort of thing, that's all available. And if you ever wanted to undertake this task yourself, like if you just don't trust S.T. Joshi, you know, this would be very helpful for doing that, I would suppose. But I kind of feel like nobody knows H.P. Lovecraft better than Joshi at this point. He's pretty much been studying H.P. Lovecraft, his life and his texts, well, since the 70s. And S.T. Joshi is the guy who wrote the definitive biography of H.P. Lovecraft, I Am Providence. So yeah, I trust Joshi, and that's why his texts are used in every scholarly edition, practically. There are exceptions, but they're stupid exceptions. But this edition is kind of his last word on that. He did change a few things. They're all minor. All the changes in this, if you compare them to his previous work, they're all really minor. So this isn't something you have to run out and get, particularly since it's probably expensive by now. But since I am such a huge fan of Lovecraft, of course I jumped on this as soon as I heard about it. And it's a beautiful set of books. It really is. And so yeah, The Variorum edition. It's difficult for me to say that word, but here it is for H.P. Lovecraft, one of my 100 favorite books. And that's all I have to say about it at this particular time. I will catch you next time. I'll be sure to tune in tomorrow. That should be when I do my Q&A. Boy, that'll be fascinating. Okay, guys, I will catch you next time.